All right, so I'm here with Rachel Rodriguez, running to be the next governor of Florida, which sounds like a very difficult task. You're obviously running as a Republican, but it's difficult because Florida is like the most Republican state in the country right now. So let's just start, before we even get into a conversation about why you're running to be governor. I think it'd be just interesting to hear about who you are and your background. So let's start there. Who are you?
Well, thank you, Andy. First of all, I appreciate being here and being able to talk with you about what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And I want to hear a little bit more about what you're doing. It's very interesting. But a little bit more about me. I am located in South Florida. I've been here for, I think it's 12, almost 13 years now. Mm-hmm. And I'm a litigator. So don't hold it against me. But I've been a lawyer for about 20 years. And particularly in the last... well, now it's 5 years or so. What we saw happen during the COVID era, as I call it, is insanity, in short. An existential threat, both to our republic and also, I think, to human life, frankly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as a result of that, I said, well, I looked around to see where the attorneys were that were working on this, that were recognizing what the problem was and actually trying to do something about it. This is what's interesting. Usually, whatever you are, whatever field you're in, you think, you're the hammer, everything looks like a nail. So for litigators, everything looks like a legal problem. And I frankly don't think that. But this was one of those things where litigation should have resolved the problem. We have long-standing anti-discrimination laws. We have protection by the Constitution for inalienable rights. And those were the things that were just being steamrolled in the last 5 years. Yeah. And shocker, I realized that the courts are not handling this. They're not going to deal with this. Apparently, the pandemic is the golden calf that we all must bow to, and nobody's claims are going to move forward. And as a result, I realized, my utility in the courts to address actual wrongdoing is limited.
And so when you talk about, just sorry to cut you off, just to clarify, when you talk about wrongdoings, are you talking about vaccine injuries? I mean, I'm sure that came a little bit later. Are you talking about people who lost their jobs because they didn't get the vaccine, or like what exactly were the wrongdoings of COVID?
Really solid question. Yeah, it's not to be cute, but it's all the things. I call it the COVID criminal enterprise. Right. But specifically what I was dealing with, so what I have the most front seat view of were the employment civil rights violations. So you're correct, the terminations on the basis of COVID mandates from employment. But I also represented, it was the parents in Orange County together with a colleague of mine in Brevard. And we brought the mandates against, frankly, against school children, the masking mandates that was so detrimental. We brought that before the appellate courts, asking where is the authority for this? And additionally, another thing that I did, but I didn't bring it to courts because, well, I can explain what I did. The not to be cute again, but it's hospital homicide. Frankly, I think it was murder.
Yes.
And that's what we have presented in our briefs on the evidence, is that the hospital protocols for the pandemic era, and we saw this largely in 2020 and 2021, but it's still going on. Those protocols, which were the only treatments that were allowed, it shouldn't have been, but I'll explain why. Those that were allowed based on being called the COVID countermeasures under the PrEP Act, and then paid for by the CARES Act, those resulted in the deaths of thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of individuals in the United States. And those were preventable deaths based on what I can see in the evidence. And so
what was that? Like, so what was the countermeasures? Yeah. What were those countermeasures?
Well, I'll talk about what we found were and actually this is in conjunction with the former Feds Group, a nonprofit that was working with all of these aggrieved family members, widows, widowers, and survivors of this protocol. there were 25 commonalities. I wouldn't say that all of them were considered countermeasures. That would be, you'd have to take a detailed look at what the PrEP Act was actually offering.
Right.
But among those 25 commonalities of how everybody was treated, cookie cutter. This is what's so interesting. Never, ever in history, right, has health treatment been based on this, so everybody gets this. I mean, people have different blood types, different blood pressures. They have different genetic tendencies towards, who knows what. They have different, we call them comorbidities. We've never had cookie cutter health before, but that's exactly what happened. And some of the treatment that we saw within those 25 commonalities was remdesivir. I'm sure you've heard of that. That's a medicine that was tested in 2019 in, I believe it was in the Congo, and it had more than a 50% death rate just on the drug alone. And yet that's what we were using.
But ivermectin was bad. Was the problem?
But ivermectin was bad. Interesting about that. And I know we didn't want to talk about all the COVID things necessarily, but that is sort of my origin story getting into this position. But the ivermectin, I think it was hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah.
I actually looked this up because back in 2020 and 2021, there were a lot of swirling comments and people were getting banned. And so you're never quite sure, you want to vet what the information is. I looked up the DHS. Now I can't remember what it is, and I'd have to look through my files, but it was the DHS memo regarding early COVID treatment. Right. And it is true. In the documents from Department of Homeland Security, it actually lists hydrochloroquine as an adequate remedy for COVID in early 2020. It was listed. And then after that, of course, everybody was made fun of for saying that malaria, medicine had anything to do with it. But same kind of thing with ivermectin. And of course, the good thing is, after a lot of suffering and 5 years out, we now have a lot of states. Grassroots have been working very hard with the states to present, over the counter or at least behind the counter, issuance of ivermectin, which is really important.
So basically people were coming to you and they had lost their jobs. They were being forced. And this is interesting to hear because I'm in Wisconsin and we sort of expected this. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin. And so it's incredibly progressive. And so when this all went down, my initial reaction, I think just because I grew up in such a progressive city, was full on skepticism. I knew at the time they hated Trump. The Democrats hated Trump and people wanted Trump out of power. So obviously this seemed like a wonderful opportunity to do something about that. And then when you got into the summer of 2020, into the BLM riots and all of the inconsistencies in the story from Fauci and the media, people saying that you need to wear masks, and you can find out later that the masks actually didn't help at all. Stand 6 feet away, and just all of this weird stuff that I was like, I'm not doing that. I think it was just maybe my personality or something. I'm just not going to do what the government tells me to do if they're just, if they're not going to give good reasoning for it. But people were coming to you. So in Wisconsin, that was no surprise to me. But in Florida, you guys handled it better than everybody else with, I think, the oldest population in the country. It's interesting to hear that still there was so many people who had to come to you for help.
I think you're right. That is a travesty of this is that even in a state where everybody thinks we're freer, we handled this. And frankly, what's very interesting actually, Andy, is that my clients were firefighters from Orange County. Were they were not the first, but they were one of the very first groups of employees, public employees, who were being mandated shots.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And one person told me they asked dozens of attorneys to help them before I said, okay, I guess, if somebody else who doesn't work in this area, I guess I'll do it. Right. It's shocking to me that dozens of my colleagues said, I don't want to take that on. And there were multiple reasons, of course. And this was before the law in Florida was passed under special session, specifically to protect employees and parents and their children within the COVID era. So that was at the end, November of 2021, we had a special session. And my clients were going around the state with Ron DeSantis, with our governor,
really,
to promote this. Yeah, that the legislature was putting forward. And he was really promoting that to protect people in Florida.
Yeah.
Even with all of that, and of course, the part that I was talking about with the hospital homicide, as I call it, was somewhat prior. Because if you think about it, and we put this in our briefs regarding the evidence, what happened there, and all your skepticism was absolutely apt. But what was going on, remember those death tickers? Like, so many people have died.
Yeah. Those are all lies. Anyways,
all
go ahead.
Lies.
Sorry. Yes, go
absolutely.
ahead. Yeah.
But we have actually stated in our briefs where, because we've submitted these briefs. I can go into exactly what they are, but on behalf of survivors and aggrieved family members, sort of like a victim presses charges. So we've taken their testimony and said, on behalf of them, we're advocates, not, filing a lawsuit, but we're advocates. We're bringing this to law enforcement. Here's the evidence. Here are your witnesses. Go forward. And in the states, we've done this in 7 states, in the states that had in their state criminal code, a domestic terrorism. So a state statute on domestic terrorism, not just the federal. We actually included that. And that's why. Because that whole program, all the deaths and the death tickers and constantly telling people that there's not enough beds, everything is, that and stay inside, stay, wrapped up and separated from people. That is a terror campaign. And the reason that it comes under the legal elements for crimes in most of the states where they have these is because it's in order to effectuate a particular policy outcome or social action, which it did, right? I mean, one can argue about what all the policy positions were. One of them would be to push people into the shots, but it also moved society's thinking and actions towards a particular end. And that's terror campaign.
Yeah, through fear mongering. And that is something that I don't think a lot of people want to say, but I think it's really obvious that it was right in line with terrorist techniques. And I mean, people were horrified to go outside. There was one case in the world where COVID was contracted outside and the people were like face to face for like 10 hours straight or something. It was like some crazy case. Yeah. And they locked us in our houses and told us, don't go see your family, don't go see your dying loved ones or anything like that. And that was all fear mongering. And then you saw I think the worst part about all of it is that nobody was held accountable. None of the media, none of the politicians. I mean, maybe they're being held accountable and that nobody trusts them anymore, but
we're working on it. Yeah. I think so. So going back to one of the things I said, honestly, I prayed about what to do next because I thought I don't want to steward my time, treasure, and talents, right? I don't want to steward those things in a way that wastes them in front of courts where I and my colleagues have filed dozens. I don't know how many of these cases across the country. I myself took one of them all the way to the Supreme Court.
Wow. Okay.
I sued Disney on a mandate here in Florida because, this is an interesting point, just a little aside. After the law that made it clear that public employers could not mandate the shots and private employers had to provide 5, not just the 2 that we know of, medical and religious, but 5 types of exemptions under state law. What the employers did is they found ways around that. Well, you didn't, what was the thing that Disney said? Disney said, well, we no longer have a mandate. But you have to mask up and you're going to be, designated to eat in this area, but we don't have a mandate. Yeah. I'm like, that is a de facto mandate. And you're still firing the person because you found out, because you did a survey essentially through the mandate prior to find out who would comply or not. And this is what we had problems with in Florida. Because now we had some protection, but they just got around it because there was a lot of federal money flowing for this.
If people can't see the correlation between religious, shunning people and ostracization, it's a religious situation. I mean, it was the same thing with, I talked to Mary Talley Bowden, who was getting, investigated or something by Greg Abbott.
The licensing board was trying to take her license away for healing people.
Exactly. It's a religious ideology.
Yes,
and people,
it is.
It is 100% religious, and nobody wants to talk about it. They will shun you. It's like, yeah, maybe we'll make you get the vaccine, but we're going to shove this thing up your nose every single day to see if you have COVID. And we're going to sit you in a different room and tell everybody not to talk to you and put a muzzle on your face to make sure that everybody knows that you don't have a vaccine. And it's horrible what they did to people. And, it's not like the worst possible thing, but that's pretty bad in America.
well, it's interesting because you make 2 points there. On the one hand, did we resist unto blood? Well, maybe not. So there's more resistance we can learn as Americans. We've had generally we've had things pretty good, I would say, in the course of human history. Yeah. But on the other side, it's wrong still. Yeah. It doesn't matter what the level of abuse is, it's wrong. And it was forcing people who had religious basis, their conscience before God, not just my conscience in a general sense, which, by the way, it's a very interesting thing that I've never seen this before in the civil rights context in employment, Title VII, The employers came up almost to a man. It's like it's like the lawyers were sending out memos to each other. Yeah. Oh, they got us on this one. So we're going to pivot and we're going to try this argument. And of course, the courts bought all the arguments. It didn't matter what the argument was. They bought all of them. And one of them was, this isn't actually a religious belief. So we got into the Spanish Inquisition, right? Cue Monty Python. But it's, it's like, it was, what do you really believe? And where did you find that in the Bible? And that's not actually religious. That's your conscience. You just don't like this for scientific reasons. It's not religious. I've never seen any, and it's actually prohibited by the case law from the Supreme Court on Title VII. But nobody cared.
Well, where do they think the concept of a conscience came from? No, in the Bible, that's where it came from. I've studied theology. Nobody would have thought of a conscience prior to the mass
it's your moral paradigm.
Yeah.
Moral paradigm is religious in nature.
Yeah,
and you rightly pointed out, Andy, the problem is this was always spiritual.
100%. Yeah.
And so it was fighting against other spiritual authority, which for most of us that were against it is God and God's order, and created order in our bodies. And, in the context of, what do we do with our bodies? What is good and right? And when we steward our physical body, that's, if I can sum it up, I think that's largely it. And that, that authority being God was juxtaposed with the state and or whatever authorities being God. And that's really what happened.
Yeah, I agree 100% that it does seem COVID is it'll be such an interesting time. We don't even, I don't think, know the half of what actually happened during COVID. And I think it's the culmination of 60 years of the government trying to cram down American minds that they are the sole authority on all things and that everybody must obey them.
That's it.
It's about, it is. It was 100% the culmination of either you obey God and, your conscience's understanding of God on the basis of scripture, or you obey the government. And I'm actually surprised that we had people in America who were like, I'm actually not going to obey the government, because my generation, Gen Z, most of them did just do what the government said to do. I mean, I had friends who were 20-year-olds at the time in college in really good shape and claimed to be conservatives, claimed to be Christians and all these things. And when they were told that you can't go back to school or you can't go back to work if you don't get the jab, they just obediently and mindlessly and blindly went and did it. And that was the most horrifying thing that I ever saw, because the older generations were the ones who were like, I'm not doing this. The younger generations were like, I'm going to do it. In some ways, it should have been flipped. The older generations were more susceptible to COVID and the younger generations weren't. And the younger generations should have said, I'm not going to put this chemicals in my body, but they were lining up to do it.
Well, I think, if I may, and this is going to date me, but
Sure.
I want to give a shout out to Gen X.
Sure.
I think it was us. We were the ones. We were like, no, we don't buy that, because our parents, largely the baby boomers, there was not nearly as much pushback from them as you would have expected from the rebellious generation of the 60s, right?
Yeah, that's
very
true.
Interesting. But it was our generation that largely, and I don't know. It would be very interesting for somebody to do a full psychological evaluation on this, because Gen X, in some fashion, stood to lose the most. If because we're in the middle of our careers. And our children, like I'm on the bottom end of that, closer to millennials, of course, and I have small children, as opposed to, for my age, I could have children that were in their 20s, right? Many of my friends, their kids are going to college.
Right.
So not only would we be in the middle of our jobs at the apex of what we built in our 40s and 50s, or on, almost nearing retirement. By the way, several of my clients were very close to retirement and lost everything for retirement, because they were terminated. That's it. And they can't get rehired at their age.
No.
But, and then on top of that, having all the children, like you said, trying to go to college or whatever. And so I'm very proud of everybody who decided, like you, I'm going to be skeptical. I'm not going to do this, because the level of pressure, I would say, was probably even greater than even the stakes, because we're resilient people and we can come up with other ways to do things. But the pressure, there was really a psychological, I put it this way, and I just recently wrote to Law 360 on another one of my cases. And I said, it was never intended that our inalienable rights of life and liberty should be pitted against our right to the pursuit of happiness through the work that we're doing. And that's what happened.
The founding fathers understood that these were all concepts that worked in union and were comprehensive. They didn't work against each other. I think I talked to it's interesting that you mentioned the psychological reality of it, because I talked to a psychologist, Keith Campbell. He's like one of the most cited in the world. And he just was like, yeah, look, a lot of what's been happening over the last 60 years is just psychological warfare. From the perspective of, he's studied the guys in World War II, Carl Jung, people who were brought in to work on propaganda for the CIA and things like that. And depending on how deep you want to go into it, there's a lot of psychological warfare, propagandistic warfare. And nobody really knew that. Like nobody was putting the pieces together, because I mean, it just felt like it came out of nowhere. It was like one day I looked at my phone, I was like, okay, there's a coronavirus in China. And then the next day it's like,
well, all the pieces don't seem to fit together until you see, the COVID pandemic, right? Yeah. So the idea that our foods are manipulated, and that there's so much plastic everywhere, you think, well, that's tragic, but that's food industry, right? And you think, fine, I'll go to my local farmer. And then the idea of big pharma, and all of the things we're supposed to put into ourselves. I actually vaccinated in part my children, right? Because there's it doesn't seem connected to things. Right. I knew the education system was a bit of a farce, because I've been through it, right? But
totally. But not a lot of people knew that until COVID. Because you would still have people come out of the education system who could think. And so you started to think, well, it's just, it's how they were trained at home or what. You're not putting all the pieces together to see that there is really a spiritual plan. I'm going to say it's spiritual, because I don't even think that some of the humans we think are responsible for all of that. That's a lot. It looks more like a spiritual plot where humans are engaged in it. I think I totally agree. It's spiritual, 100%. And I think it's a culture that was lulled to sleep through prosperity and luxury for a very long time. And, I had gone through the public schools. I graduated 2 years before high school, 2 years before COVID. And I kept trying to tell like everybody, like these schools are way worse than you think that they are. No one should send their kids to these places. All of the trans stuff, all the sexual ideology that was there, remnants of that were there. The building blocks were there prior to that.
Yes.
And then just the pure hatred of God. I mean, if you were a Christian, if you're a conservative, or if you were even like Christian adjacent or conservative adjacent, they would go after you. The teachers would go after you. I had a situation where we had to do a project on somebody that we looked up to, and we had to like make something about them. And this was one of the days that I showed up to school because I usually skipped. But they were like, pick somebody that you look up to. And so I had two options, and whatever. I have a disagreeable attitude, but I had two options. My two options were Jesus Christ and Donald Trump. And I'm not equivalent. I'm not saying those are equivalent. I'm just, one is better than the other by far. They wouldn't let me do them. Either of them. They wouldn't let me do Donald Trump. They would not let me do it. And other people had done Obama, Hillary Clinton, had done like rappers who had like raped people and had gone to prison. But I couldn't do Donald Trump. And I had brought that to, I think somehow it got up to a higher level, and they ended up backing down. But I was just like, you can't even say your opinion in these places. And these are supposed to be educational systems.
Which is dogma. You're right. Yeah. That's dogma. It's not, it's not educate. I mean, then you start going back and you look at, well, what is the nature of the public education since the Industrial Revolution? Then you're like, oh, my word. Yeah. But when you start to pull a thread and try to unravel everything back and say, because one of the things I've come to in the last few years, I have this view of myself, right, with my colleagues where we're in the trenches and there's blood and sweat and mud all over us. We're like, okay, we almost got, this kind of thing. I guess it's sort of the Braveheart, with the face paint, right? But I think I've also seen how seeing everything in I wouldn't even say everything, but as much as I've seen and seeing where everything is corrupted, it can bring you into a position of despair in the natural realm. It can make you think, why? Why am I bothering? I'm just getting arrows in my back. I'm exhausted. We're all broke, because these cases weren't sexy cases to invest in. That wasn't happening. And then I was praying about it, and I was like, I have to be able to say to people what a vision for what comes after is.
Right.
Why am I fighting evil? Yes, because it's right. And that's what we do. We occupy until the Lord returns. Okay. But what did he create us for? It wasn't just to fight evil. We actually were created without any evil. So what does that look like? And what does it mean to be in relationship with God and to do the things that he designed us for as spirit and flesh beings? What does that look like? So I started really thinking about that. And I'm glad to see there's actually a lot of other people who have been thinking on that too. I think Catherine Austin Fitts with the Solari report I just realized they were really pushing that too. The idea of art and building and
architecture, beauty. All of these things, and that's so important, and people don't realize how important it is because, again, we've been lulled to sleep into thinking that like modern, postmodern art and all this, and the our concrete and all that stuff is true beauty, or that beauty is subjective. I mean, there's a lot of philosophy there, but we have a blueprint. I mean, Christendom and I guess Western civilization,
the world, the stuff out there, the trees, the flowers.
That's true. Just the natural world. Yeah. Yes. Right. No, that's a really good point. And I guess that gets into my next question, which is just looking at Florida. It seems like Florida is sort of the state in the country. Of course, it's the most Republican state in the country, and whatever happens in Florida in this 2026 midterm seems to be like the direction that the Republican Party is going to go in, and it's a really important election.
That's what I think.
Election. Yeah,
that's what I think, and And that's why I'm here. I've said to many people, I don't have personal political aspirations. In other words, I'm not doing this because I now want to transition my career. Obviously, I'm preparing to transition my career. I'm not going to start something I don't think I can win. That's not appropriate for my team or anybody who's supporting me. Obviously, I think this is something I'm competent to do, and it would be 4 years, and I will serve. But it's not for a personal gain. It's not like, oh, here's a stepping stone to the other thing. No, how can I serve Florida? And I looked at what I was doing and I said, again, my utilities is limited now in the courts for some of the things I think are existential threats.
Yeah.
But now that I'm coming off the heels of the last several years in my state, I've met so many amazing people, and I've looked at all the issues that as well as we've done in Florida, there's still some to go. So this is a great platform. Had I built a platform over the last 5 years, then I would have, a voice on this. But I chose to do the behind the scenes thing, right? Because it's a full-time job to build that. I applaud people who have built their platforms. And so now I was like, well, this election is a good time to address issues, to tell the public about what's going on, even in Florida. To direct the conversation with the other candidates and say, we need to talk about some things here. Yeah. I mean, one we haven't even talked about yet, and that is the protection of children.
I know.
Our DCF is not okay. Our Department of Children and Families is taking children out of homes, and they're basing their budget on how many children they take out of homes. What do you expect to have happen? Yeah,
you're incentivizing
exactly.
The destruction of the family. That's
right.
Yeah. Which it seems to like, while you're talking, I just thought, it's kind of occurred to me right now that Trump, with all of his faults, and a lot of people in the Republican Party are frustrated with him right now. I have a love-hate relationship with him. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I love Trump. And then sometimes like, what are you doing? He was, I think, the necessary start in 2016 to unraveling the corruption and beginning to just basically open everybody's eyes to what has been happening.
That's right.
But 2028, I think, is going to be hopefully the beginning of whoever in the Republican Party is willing to set a vision forth for conservatives, for Republican, for the country, not just for Republicans and conservatives, but for everybody.
Yes, that's it. For the country, you serve everybody, not just the people who are aligned with you.
Right. So what does that look like? Like, what's the vision for Florida, or what's the vision for the country?
Well, somebody asked me, I'll speak on Florida because I'm not running the federal race, but I do think I think coming back to the concept that this is spiritual. These are uniquely heightened spiritual times, and it's spiritual war. Yeah. But also somebody asked me the question this way, and I really appreciated it, which was, how would you know, like, how would you measure your governorship in the first year? How would you think you're doing a decent job? And I thought that was a really good way to kind of think through what it is that I envision for the state. And you can see on my website, by the way, that's www.rachel4gov.com. But I call them the 5 R's to kind of encapsulate what I think we can still work on. But each one of those, we're talking medical freedom, which we talked at length about, parental rights, which we haven't gotten too far into, reforming the courts. I made a comment about that, but also the economic relief. And of course, stewardship. I say reserving the land that we have, the resources we have in Florida. All of those, I think, when we look at what I would want to see, I would want to see less government in your day to day. There should be a marked difference where people at the local level are able to function with the government being less noticeable in their life, in regulation, in forcing compliance, in taxes. There should be more young people buying homes, having ownership over land. I think that's very important.
That'd be wonderful, and not like China and different foreign countries.
Right. Not the foreign investment that's taking over what needs to be. We need to place Floridians first.
Yeah,
I think also if we have, criminal statistics are a decent measure. I don't think that they alone are the measure. We need to look at what's going on. Mm-hmm. But I think better test scores across the state would be a great measure, that there is more investment in the children, however that's being done, whether that's being done through more homeschooling, more efficient use of resources. That's how I want to say it, more efficient use of resources, not just more resources, but more efficient use of whatever resources for children. Having children more eager and curious to learn will raise test scores, if you want to call it that. You'll see that happening. These are just some ideas, but that's what I would want to see happening under a governor.
And I think that educational piece is important, just because I think the reason why, and I'll just speak personally because I don't know how everybody thinks through this, but I just did horrible. I did horrible in school. I had the worst GPA you could possibly imagine. I skipped so many classes. I was so sick of it. And then over the past 5 or 6 years, like all I've done is read books, studied on my own, interviewed scholars and authors. And I love learning, and I love it. I'll never stop. Yes. I just love it. And I love reading. And I think one of the things that was just frustrating, well, there's two main things. One is that if you're not being taught the truth, you're not going to be interested in it. And I think you're not going to be interested in what you're being taught. You might be good at regurgitating false facts or regurgitating some, I don't know, whatever you need to regurgitate to get the good test score to make good money when you graduate college. Right. And that's fine, I guess. I don't really like that. I think that's kind of pointless. But like, if you're teaching people the truth is compelling in and of itself, and you don't have to coerce them into wanting to learn about it.
I'm going to steal that soundbite, by the way. Thank you. That's a great one.
You're welcome. No, but really, you don't have to coerce them when you're telling them the truth. Yeah. The truth is compelling on its own. Yeah. And that's why it's the truth. And then that's kind of the main thing. Like, I wasn't ever interested in it. And then also just the fact that you couldn't debate, you couldn't have a conversation, you couldn't disagree. The teachers, the educators obviously had political biases, and they were totally unashamed of trying to cram that into your worldview and make you conform to that. And that made it so that, like, I don't want everybody to believe, well, I do want everybody to believe what I believe because I think I'm right about certain things, but I don't want to like force anybody into that. They have to come to that on their own, but I want to debate.
Yeah, it's boring too.
It is boring. It can get boring. But I want to debate. Let's have a conversation. Let's go after each other a little bit. And you couldn't do that. And so those two things, I think, just completely, made education not really education. And I just checked out. And I think a lot of young people just check out.
I think a lot of intelligent young people do. And also the structure is not conducive to everybody's way of learning. We know that's been studied. Yeah. But I think, I think the variety of educational forms is really important. Is there statistics and data to show that there are particularly better forms of education than others? Yes, I would say so. But not everybody has the resources or means to match up to that. So I think that the policy position, that the posture should be as much diversity and access as possible to things that will work for various children.
That's it. And I like, you say access to resources and things like that, rather than just more resources. And I think that's important, because for the longest time I had heard from teachers and teachers unions, we need more resources, which usually meant we need more money, which usually meant we need more technology or something like that. And the technology, I think, is proven to not help at all.
No, it's actually detrimental in some cases. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it doesn't seem like that's the case. It doesn't seem like if you pay these people more, it's going to get better. People are making more money in general. And I understand the economy is different, but smart boards, laptops, that stuff doesn't help. To me, it seems to be like it's actually what you're teaching them and what you're talking about that makes the difference. Like, how much control over that does the governor have in Florida?
Well, I don't... I would say that I'm still studying because I really want to study all the policy positions that Florida's in right now and what's brewing. I have some amazing people on my team that are policy. They really understand this stuff, and I lean into their knowledge. But I would say, in general, a governor has a position. How can I put this? The governor doesn't necessarily go into each of those places and micromanage. In fact, that would be detrimental to the structure. It's more like good executive management. I see where these things are. I have a vision based on good data of if we change this incentive and move this other thing, take away the negatives like waste and fraud, and promote that which is positive and good. If we tweak those things, people do their own thing. They self-govern. They see the innovation. You're just taking away obstacles from people so that people who are given by God intelligence and innovation and ideas will be able to run with those to the betterment of everyone. To me, that's the position that a governor as an executive of a state is in. I'm not saying there's not some other positions, more detailed things that you're responsible for, but that to me is the overarching view, I think.
So what does it look like right now in Florida as far as who else is running to be the governor? Are there any Democrats who are making a name for themselves? I know that there are a couple of Republicans, but kind of lay out what's happening on the campaign.
Well, to be honest, I think I'd have a shorter list for you of who's not running for governor right now. It's like an entire page on the FEC website. But and in fact, just recently, somebody else got into the race who had run for, I think his name is Shaw. He had run for ag commissioner, I think, some time ago. So it seems like there's a lot of people who also see, as I do, that this is an opportunity to say what needs to be said, and also for the voters to get, to research the positions of all the candidates. I think most people who are following politics, not most people, but people following politics have probably heard of Byron Donalds. They've heard of Paul Renner, who was the state Speaker of the House here in Florida for, I believe it was 22 to 24. They may have also heard that Jay Collins is running because he's the current lieutenant governor, and many people have heard of James Fishback.
He announced?
He did announce, yes. Okay. He did announce over a month ago. People know James Fishback from the social media aspect of that in particular. And there are a few others. Now, on the Democrat side, I'll be honest with you, I don't think anybody's making a name for themselves just yet. It's funny. I don't think any of the other Republican candidates can say this, but I actually sued former Mayor Demings, Jerry Demings, who is currently, he's announced, or at least he's signed up. I think he recently announced for running for governor on the Democrat side. So it's a really wide field.
I just looked it up. There's like 50 names on this. And
a lot of independents and non-party affiliated people too, which I think is that may be the headline, isn't it? At this stage politically, first, that there's so many people running, and second, that so many people are running. We're a closed primary state. You have to pick a party if you want to get into the primary. So I think it's very interesting that so many people are running outside of a major party banner.
I was just going to ask you about this because I think that one of the positives right now, or what people would think is a positive, is somebody running outside of the two major parties because of, and especially in your case, like you're talking a lot about health freedom and some of the things that Trump Like Trump won the MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, people. He won them over, and they actually helped him win the election. I don't think he would have won without Trump. Yeah, and yet those people, I think a lot of them feel betrayed by Trump, and for good reason. There's a list of reasons why I think Trump has betrayed that specific group of people. And so
far, we'll say, we're not done yet, but yes,
100%. And I hope things turn around. But I think there's a lot of people that are just with the war in Iran, with certain promises that have been made that seem to have just changed and not been kept. I think there are people saying, again, I voted in 2024. I don't want to vote again. I don't trust these people. I don't trust politicians. Right. And we've had that for like 10 years now. Yeah. And for good reason. People should be skeptical of politicians.
I think that's right.
Yeah. But what do you do about that?
Well, so a couple of things. First, I think that especially people of faith, we need to ask God, what does righteous leadership look like?
Yeah.
And then get on our knees and plead to God for righteous leaders who are led by his Spirit and who are humble and will submit to his law and rule. That's the only way that you deal with the accountability problems and the let your yes be yes and your no be no, is somebody who has that I want to say relationship, but also that they will be pricked in their conscience personally. They don't need someone outside of them or the media to catch them on these things. You need a leader of great discernment. Most of us didn't know what was going on in 2020 at first.
Yeah.
And, maybe some of us like you and I, we're pretty skeptical up front.
Yeah.
But we needed leaders who understood that this is a mass attack on human life in all respects.
Yeah.
And that should have picked that up early and then acted accordingly.
Yeah.
And I think so to me, the first thing is you seek God for leadership. I think secondly, you have to take look. I forget who it is, but it's who the quote is attributed to. But it's etched into the stone in one of the buildings in DC. I lived in DC for 8 years, unfortunately, and it was etched in the stone there, and it says the price of freedom is eternal vigilance.
That's good.
It's excellent. It's exhausting too, right? But that's the truth. And I think it behooves us. I've always looked at our democratic republic and our civic rights as resources that we steward in the same way that we steward our health and our intelligence and our education and our money, everything. And I think it's important for us to be looking at people's records and really testing it. Don't just go with whatever so-and-so said. I mean, that can be a factor point, but research them.
Right.
In this race, I'm presenting the fact that I've been fighting. I am doing now what I have said and done for years. If you want to look back, you can, and you'll find me saying the exact same thing on podcasts and at speeches and so forth. My faith is not pulled out of my pocket because I'm running. This is what I really believe. And I don't say this too often, but, I sued the Republican Party of Florida in 2024 because they were abusing a nonprofit client of mine, and they were saying that it was lawful. And I said, no, it's not. Now I'm running as a Republican for important reasons. And that doesn't mean I'm against the party or the people who are working very, very hard to the party structure is a type of organization that really helps our civic life. And I understand that. And I'm not against any of that, but I'm also against bad acting. So it's like, to me, those are the kind of things I would look for in a leader. Do you, is your yes, yes, and your no, no? Are you clear when you don't know something? These are the kind of things I think, and that's probably more than what you were looking for in an answer. But I think we have an extraordinary opportunity in these midterms to unify people, not just to do the tribal thing and fight one another, but to unify over the issues that we all understand in our gut and in our spirit are problematic. And then look for people that are going to, that have a record of and are willing to continue to serve. Yeah.
No, I don't think that that's too much for an answer. I think that that's great. I mean, I worked on a political campaign 2021 to 2022, guy running to be the governor of Minnesota, Dr. Scott Jensen. Yeah. And he, what you're saying, like about people pulling their faith out of their pocket when it's necessary or when they think that they're going to gain power, people, that's sort of a cliche that people think, oh yeah, that happens. Like that happens all the time. Like I saw that all the time. It's to me as a Christian, and I study theology and I love theology, and I could read old theologians from the 1500s all day, and no one wants to talk to me about it because
Karl Barth.
Yeah, right. John Owen. I can do it. I love it. That's like the most disgusting thing you can do, in my opinion, is to just pull Christianity out of your pocket when it's convenient, and then behind closed doors do the exact opposite.
Isn't that using God's name in vain?
100%. That's absolutely.
And that's a serious problem.
Yes. The other thing that I was going to just say, and maybe this takes it too far. I don't think so. You'll have to tell me what you think. I do think politicians need to be willing to die for what they believe to be true.
Yes.
Because that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like
that's right.
People get into office all across the country in different levels, and something happens. Somebody talks to them. Their views suddenly change. Something, whatever. I don't know. There's theories all over the place as to what's causing that. And they change. And I think that conservatives, especially Christians, just need to be like, look, I'm going to tell the truth, whatever the cost. It doesn't really matter. And I'm not going to be controlled by anybody. And if that means that I get killed, literally get killed, then that's just going to be how it is. And I know that sounds, it's easier said than done, but I think it needs to be talked about.
Well, look, I'm 100% with you. And I think the main thing, well, let me back up and say, so I'm sure you've heard James O'Keefe. He's my client, actually. I'm really proud to represent him. He says, my how does he say it? My price is my life, or my life is my price, basically. And he's right. Anything short of your life means that you're buyable.
Right.
And granted, some of those costs are very high.
Yeah.
We saw parts of that in the COVID era. I mean, I have 3 children. You know where I'm going to go with that. Like, some prices are very, very high. But I think that's where we have to put our faith in action. Do we really believe the living God is who he says he is? And if I follow and obey him, he will do the promises he's coming into to me and to believers. Do we really believe that? Or not?
Right.
Because I think for many of us, the broader collection, the church, our actions indicate we don't actually believe that.
100%. If you did a study, well, and many people have talked about this and written books on this. If you look at the church in Germany prior to the rise of Hitler, and you look at the church in America right now, general broad evangelical church, you will see no differentiation between the two. Yeah. They are identical. And I've read the theologians, I've read the history, and that's the scariest thing to me, because I subscribe to Bonhoeffer's view of the church, that the church is the conscience of the state. When the church has lost its way morally, it's lost its conscience. The state has no choice, no chance. And when you're talking about following God, obeying his word, things that I think like 15 years ago, if a politician said, or somebody running for office, people would be like, okay, whatever, you Christian fundamentalists, you're not going to get into office. Now people are like a little bit more open to that, because the atheist regime has kind of fallen. And especially with COVID, I think that the rationalistic stream of thought, the Enlightenment stream of thought, kind of led to COVID in certain ways. And that would take like 10 hours to explain, but people are more open to the spiritual aspects of things.
Yeah. I think you're right. And, but it's interesting. We're so programmed that even so, my website, one of the first things, now it's a little bit further down, but when I first put it out there as sort of a brochure of who I am, I said follower of Jesus, mother, attorney, just kind of who I am. And then there was one other reference to Jesus, and it was I want to serve or be a Christ-like leader. That was it. Just those two references. That's it. And and it was interesting because this is who I am. I'm like, this is me. And of course, I've become more radical as I went through law school and lived in DC. Like, I became way more radical, right? Mm-hmm. But people know that. But even Christians were coming to me and saying, well, if you want to position yourself in the race, be more broad and just say God. And my answer, and I gently, because I understand where people are coming from, but firmly, my statement is this. If the power of the living God is in the name of Jesus, then how dare I, as someone who follows him and wants his power and direction in this campaign for the well-being of Florida? It's not just about me. It's for the well-being of Florida. How dare I ask him to bless what I'm doing when I won't put his name, which is the power? That's not even logical in my view. No,
it's not. And there's a very clear Bible verse, Matthew 10:33, but whoever denies me before men, I will also deny before my Father who is in heaven. I think, and not a lot of Christians know that verse because not a lot of pastors preach that sort of thing. They don't talk about, and I don't blame the Christians. I don't blame the congregants as much. I do wish people read their Bibles more, but I think, and it comes down to teaching in the churches, but you're 100% right. And it's refreshing to hear. It's like if you lose because you tell people that you believe in Jesus and you want to follow him, it's like okay.
Well, right. And I think I do, by the way, I mean, this is theological, but I do think there's a difference between denying Christ and simply being changing your wording a little bit so that you're
more
less overt
correct
about your precise view. And I do think good minds can differ to some degree.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. It's like, I am making a bid to serve the entire state. The people who agree with me, the people who don't agree with me ideologically, politically, the people who serve Allah as their God, the people who don't. I need to serve everyone. And I don't think that it's respectful for me to try to be something other than I am, or not to be clear about the basis for why I think the way I do, or how I hold myself accountable. It's because of my relationship to Christ. So it's a necessary component of making clear to people. You won't have a question about where I stood on something. Like, well, I don't know why she did that. No, now you know. And if you want to have a detailed conversation or figure out exactly what I'm thinking, then let's do that. Let's have that policy and moral conversation about, because the law comes out. I think you said this earlier, the law, and you were talking about conscience, but the law is the moral worldview. We can't even exist as a society without that moral component. So isn't it better to be upfront with where we all are? And then we can have that discussion. That's how I look at it, especially as a lawyer.
Yeah. I mean, I think that makes sense. And it makes sense also as a lawyer that you would look at it that way. But I think that over the past decade, there's a book written by a guy named Carl Trueman called The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self. And basically what he aimed to do, and it's like heady philosophy stuff, but what he aimed to do is basically he set out in the book to answer the question, how did we get to the place in society in which a man can say that they're trapped in a woman's body and everybody embraces that and encourages it? Like, how do you get there philosophically? He's just asking the question. And he goes through 500 years of philosophy. If you're into that stuff, it's an amazing book. And
sounds like it.
It's really interesting. And one of the things that he talks about, and I think it's pretty obvious, especially he wrote it, 5 or 6 years ago, is that Christianity was so deeply embedded in Western civilization, in America, in the founding fathers, even though some of them were rationalist Enlightenment, people, they still came from Anglo-Saxon Europe and the Anglican Church and all of that stuff. They're so
culture was there.
Yeah. Even if they totally rejected Christianity, they were still more Christian than a lot of Christians are today. So they were very Christian. And that was so embedded that when these sorts of questions, like, can a man be a woman? These things that seem to be crazy to a lot of people, those questions came up. Christians weren't quickly able to articulate an answer because we hadn't had to defend any of that for a long time.
I think you're right.
And that now, like, shame on us in a lot of ways. We should always, Peter says, we should always be ready to defend the faith.
Right.
And shame on us for not. And I think that if we did, we would be in a better place, but we didn't. But to your point, being able to articulate and defend why you have the policy positions that you have, for a long time, that wasn't a sexy political thing to do. Nobody really wanted to listen to that. I do think that has changed now. I think that the 3.5 hour conversations on Joe Rogan, long interviews, the way that media is done now is encouraging of politicians to lay it all out there, explain why you believe what you believe.
That soundbite you used is the point here. We used it in the education. You said, what is it?
Something
How
about,
did you say it? About truth.
Truth is compelling on its own, and you don't need to coerce people. I mean, you have to use a lot more coercion to a lie than you do to the truth. It's compelling.
Because it's not as interesting. Like, people aren't drawn to it. I think was what you were saying.
Yeah, I did.
And I think the same. I think we're seeing that writ large. I think that's also something that we're seeing on the political stages, on the professional stages. We're people are asking fundamental questions because they're deeply hurting.
Yeah, true.
And there's no answers.
Right.
They think that nobody has an answer. There is an answer. There are answers, obviously, but people are now searching for them. So I do think it's attractive for people to say, here's my answers. And this is why my life looks this way. This is how I make these decisions. I think on a policy level, for example, very important. Why is human life precious? Why do I think that? Well, I can't answer that question without going to scripture and telling you why I think it's precious.
Right.
But because I think life is precious, I have worked very hard to fight to get criminal accountability for the lives that were snuffed out due to COVID policies, and the government paid for it.
Right.
This is also why I'm pro-life. I believe that human life is precious, and I'm not the one who decides when that starts.
Right.
It's pretty clear to me that the Lord knits us together in the womb. So if it's precious at, conception and at 7 weeks and at 21 and out of the womb and at 85, it's all precious. So on the end of life spectrum, it's not okay to say there's nothing worthwhile in your life anymore. No.
Yeah.
Life is precious. It is valuable to God. There is always value in people. Like we turned the whole thing upside down, right? We think of money as the value. It's not.
No.
It's the measure of value, one measure of value, right?
And a faulty one in some ways.
What's that?
And a faulty one in America.
Right. Well, it gets more faulty as time goes on because it's so manipulated, right? Yes. That's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
But the value is in what God has made, which is the earth that we see. It is good. And people. And then from there, what we make, because he's given us that glory to be able to make things and to think of things and to build things. And so that's where the value lies. And a person who is at the later stage of their life, there's always value there. And it behooves us to look for and draw out that value in them. Not snuff it out and say there's nothing there. But we do that at every stage of life, don't we? We say there's no value in the womb. Forget it. We tell the kids, speaking of education, you're not going to learn anything. There's, we tell the folks that are struggling emotionally or economically or whatever, and they make poor choices and they end up in the criminal system. There's no value to you. We're not going to do anything with this. We're not going to draw in the value of human life there. Good luck. Recidivism.
Right.
It's all across the board, and it's got to stop. Yeah. I think if we look at all the societal problems that we see, fathers, fathers aren't very valuable. We don't need them. I mean, all of this ties into one line of thinking. You see what I'm saying? And so to me, it's like, I can't describe any of those things or talk about those policies without being honest about where that's coming from for me.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I think for a lot of my childhood in school, the conversation around human life and the dignity or significance of the human person, especially in relationship to abortion, which is a gross euphemism for murder, but just talking about like, why are people important?
Right.
Or what is a life? What is life? There was all these questions around this because atheism ultimately and science itself ultimately does not answer that question. You don't science doesn't tell us when a life begins. A heartbeat doesn't tell us when a life begins. That's like a very materialistic way of looking at things.
But by the way, the more we look at science, the closer it gets to saying what God has already said. But
100. No, I totally agree with that. And it points towards the truth.
Of course.
But the truth is deeper than that. And I think that all of the concessions that the conservatives made over the years of like, okay, well, 14 weeks or whatever, like these were all concessions. But one of the things that I think a lot of young people are sick of, especially young men, like it seems like there's a lot of young conservative men.
Yes.
And they've gone in a lot of different directions, and some of them have gone too far in certain directions, but they kind of are just sick of the compromise on everything.
I think that's right.
It's just constant compromise. I'm sick of it. I am so sick of it. I mean, my city in Madison, Wisconsin, like every single church I go to is compromised 100%. They don't preach the truth. They don't believe the gospel. They will lie to you and say that they do. And then they'll promote baby murder. They'll promote transgenderism. It's sickening. And young people are just completely burnt out. And I think a lot of them have fallen into nihilism and meaninglessness.
Yes.
There's nothing left in life. And that's obviously not true. Like that, just because a bunch of people are lying to you doesn't mean that there's no meaning in life.
Well, and the problem is it's still carnal, if I can use these sort of churchy words. That's the problem. It's still carnal.
Right.
Because you're looking at what's out there and you're finding despair in the fact that the world's corrupt. Well, not to be cute, but newsflash, the world's been corrupt since.
Where have you been?
So that comes back to, then people who follow God need to be a window into the joy of the Lord, the peace of the Lord, the things that we know deep down exist because we're dissatisfied with corruption as it stands. That should be one of our number one evidences that God exists and there's something there that we're created for a purpose. Because in our gut, we get it and we're depressed and just shadows of ourselves when we're told the opposite of that. And this goes into everything. It's like, instead of thinking about, I'll take an example, instead of thinking about the negatives of the decision to abort your child, why not talk about the preciousness of the life of that mother and what brought her to this point where she doesn't see that or in her child. And that's, to me, we can always focus on the heart of God for these things. Why is justice so important? Well, mercy doesn't have any meaning without the justice. Like that, we have to, I think we demonstrate through our lives and our testimony, well, to repeat myself, the heart of God. Yeah. And that's the whole of it.
I think what you're saying just reminds me of I think what Jordan Peterson did really well for a long time and still does, although he hasn't been in the media because he's sick. Just talking about like the beauty of responsibility, this sort of paradox of responsibility, that taking on responsibility brings fulfillment, it brings meaning, it brings joy, it brings purpose.
Yes.
And for the longest time, the talking points to young people, and I heard it growing up, was like, I actually remember a situation where I was at Chick-fil-A with a friend, and I was probably 19, and we were just talking about like, I don't know, we were probably talking about like, we want to get married and have kids. It's just weird for 19-year-old boys to talk about, which is sad, but it is weird. And there was an old lady. Yeah, there was an old lady next to us at the table next to us. And she was like, I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was basically like this snide comment about you don't want to get married. Like you don't want to get married till you're in your 30s. Just wait, go have fun. And I was just kind of like shot back, like some sort of like, why would I listen to you? Like, you seem miserable, basically. Like,
that's right.
Why are you commenting on, we're trying to like talk about something good. How many 19-year-olds are talking about good things? None. And what we get from the older generation is like, hey, shut up. Because I probably feel convicted about it. You should just go and make the same terrible decisions that I made. And it's like, I'm married. I've been married for 4 years. I have 3 kids.
Woo-hoo.
And we have a house, and I have a job, and we do fine, and I love it, and I love our kids, and it's exhausting and difficult, and I'm tired all the time, and it's not always fun, but it's the most like meaningful thing that I've done in my life. And the person who had to convince me of that was like a Jordan Peterson, the psychologist, not the church, not people in the church, my parents talked about it and they were very convincing, but it was basically like some random psychologist from Canada. And the politicians, the church, nobody else was saying, go get married, go have kids, until he started saying that. And
you're right.
I did it. And it's great.
I've seen that. I mean, there are pockets of subcultures where you see that more. But that's a real shame. And I think you touched on something, and this probably be another very long period of time, but just the fact that people who have been broken because of decisions, because of victimization, because of whatever. And now they're suffering, but they can't come to the place of just giving it to God, just saying, I'm suffering, I'm hurting, I need you to heal me. And instead they want to make more misery around them. One thing that I've been thinking a lot about as I've looked at the tribalism that our country has split into, because I'm, little different growing up situation from you. In the 80s and 90s, I would say we were the most unified, especially early 90s, most unified as a nation. From what I can tell, I grew up in Atlanta, and everything was cool. You know what I mean? Like, everything was cool. And then after when I was an adult, then I was attacked for my skin color. Like, it's just this weird, so the tribalism has gotten much worse in the last 25 years. Like, it was reinvented, if you will. It was fomented. And I've been thinking a lot about the political culture, especially looking at social media, because that's a new one too. I didn't grow up with social media. And looking how people talk to one another. And I realized even in the fight that I've been in, even with my understanding that there are some people who need criminal accountability, they have done very wrong. There's still this, like, I'm in pain. I lost a lot. So I'm not going to forgive. I'm going to turn to bitterness. And I'm not saying people didn't lose a lot. I'm talking about people who lost. Scott Shara's family, by the way, in Wisconsin. Did you know about that case, Grace Shara?
No, I never heard of it.
She had Down syndrome, and she was 19, I think. And she was murdered by the hospital, like a very clear-cut case where they over-medicated her and euthanized her. Like, it was sick stuff, right? But it happened in a lot of... Anyway, Scott Shara...
What hospital? What hospital did that?
I should have that information, but I can't remember which one. You can look up the last name, SCHARA, Grace Shara. And I've been very impressed by her father's handling of this. I've spoken to him a few times, and one of the things that he did that was so impressive to me is he said, I first repented before the Lord that I believed all this stuff, and I'm responsible for my daughter. But once he got past that, he let it go. He let it go to the Lord, and they said, now I'm going to fight for her life. But he's never been bitter this whole time. It's like he's fought tooth and nail, put all of his money into this lawsuit. One of my very dear friends and colleagues, Warner Mendenhall, was handling that case, and it went all the way to trial. But he showed the opposite of what you generally see, which is you hurt me, I'm going to make you pay. I'm going to say these nasty things about you. And I'm not saying people don't have, that hurt, but I'm just saying that's not going to get us to a place of restoration. It's not going to bring people to truth. What's going to draw people to truth is seeing something supernatural, seeing that I've been harmed and you've taken my family, but I love you and I forgive you because I've been loved and forgiven.
Right.
That is powerful. And I believe God's people need to be showing that more right now. I mean, this is an opportune time.
You mentioned a word that's not mentioned anymore by Christians very often, and just by anybody, which is repent. That is, and it's a good word. It's in the Bible a lot. It's like one of the main things talked about, and it's just admitting that you're wrong and repenting and saying, I was wrong about whatever it is that I did, asking for God's forgiveness, and then moving on from it. It's a lot better to do that than to just hold on to resentfulness and hatefulness and anger and bitterness for a long period of time. It has physical effects on people, and spiritual and mental and all the different things. And to what you're saying, I think one of the things that I've noticed in my brief life and brief understanding of what's happening in the political realm is that it seems to me like our culture and the people in America, generally speaking, we went from a culture that believed wholeheartedly in redemption, the idea of redemption, the idea that things can be made new, that people can be made new, to an irredemptive society in which you cancel, destroy people, ruin their lives, you use lawfare, do whatever you need to do for power, and you believe that who people are one day are who they are going to be for the rest of their life, and that they cannot change. And that is, it's anti-Christian to begin with.
Yes, it is.
It's the opposite of Christianity, but it's anti-American. The whole idea of America was that what was wrong with Britain and England could be redeemed by the people who started America. That's like the whole point. And slavery, we could be redeemed from that. Like there were so many different things that Americans, and with all of our faults and all of the bad things that we've done, the ideal was there, and that we believed that we could be redeemed and that we could redeem the nation through the generations. That is gone. I don't know anybody who talks about redemption anymore.
That's a very astute observation.
It's it's frustrating because that is, I mean, from a personal perspective, like that's the gospel to me, Well,
that's right.
The Christian responsibility is to be born again. And so I believe that can happen to individuals, but I also think that can happen to groups, to churches, to nations.
Yes,
to states.
That is clear in Scripture. That's absolutely right.
We're at a point where so many people are devastated. What happened during COVID and just politically and all the craziness and chaos that, like we talked about, there's all this nihilism, nothing matters.
That's right.
And I think the message should be redemption. Like things could be redeemed. It's dead. We have a lot of dead stuff in our society right now.
That's right.
It needs to be brought back to life.
I agree with that. 100%.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's just a rant.
That's it. That's the show right there. And I mean, that's the word is redemption. But to that point, the idea that you cannot be redeemed is accusation.
It's horrible. Yeah.
And that is satanic.
It's satanic. It's satanic. It's satanic 100%. And it goes deep. I mean, if some of the things that I have looked into about the government and blackmailing people and whatever was happening with Epstein and all of that stuff, I mean, this is like deep, dark stuff.
Yeah.
It's all built on the idea that people can't change and they can't be redeemed.
That's exactly right.
And it's totally satanic. It's like literally, it's not satanic in the weird, like this is everything satanic. It's like satanic in the literally. This is the playbook.
And that's what he does. He's the accuser of the brethren. Right.
That's what his name means. Exactly.
And that made me think. Epstein. You had mentioned earlier. It was very astute as well. The idea that politicians should be willing to pay with their life.
Yeah, I think so.
And of course, it really begs the question, what are they dying for? I mean, that's a critical.
Right.
But let's take the case of blackmail. People should, in that position, let's say you did something wrong, you got caught, or you were victimized into the thing.
Yeah.
The way of the gospel is to say, I only stand on the mercy of God anyways.
Right.
So do what you're going to do, and I'm going to stand on the mercy of God, because either A, I've repented of that thing and his blood has covered it, or B, I didn't do it and I'm a victim and I trust in his mercy. But it's always through the mercy. So there's no reason to be manipulated by anything. It's like, not that you invite it saying, do your worst, but kind of. It's like, okay. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the apostles in the book of Acts, they're told to stop preaching the gospel brought before the courts. And they're like, do what you think is right. But as for us, we cannot help but speaking about what we have seen and heard. And then they got beaten. And they're like, do whatever they want. And they got beaten.
And they left rejoicing. So it's like, there's that's the whole point is, and you see that with the, in the Old Testament, you see that with the faith of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right?
Yes, right.
They were not told ahead of time what would happen.
Yeah.
They just said, God can do it.
Yeah.
So here we go.
Right.
I mean, what would happen, Andy, if Christians today in the 21st century in America acted like that?
Well, that is the history of America.
It is.
That is America. Like,
yeah, it is.
The more history I read and the more I understand this country and where it came from and what the people, and I get emotional when thinking about this because it's what the people sacrificed. Yeah. And thinking about like my great grandparents who were in World War II and great great grandparents who were in World War I, and they built the railroads. Right. Traveled west, didn't have life insurance, didn't have all these health insurance, life insurance. They didn't have any of that stuff. They just did it. They just built did it. And went and built. They not only built things materially, they built families and they built legacies and they built churches, and they did a lot of different amazing and beautiful things. And it was all built on that idea. It was just like, we're gonna do it, and we don't care what happens. And to the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, another example is Abraham and Isaac. Yeah, it's all over the Bible. It's like, okay, if I have to kill my son, God can surely bring him back to life. That's He'll bring about the nations through me in some way because He's promised it.
Because He's promised.
And we're such a utilitarian, pragmatic society that the idea that you would act in faith is it's horrifying to a lot of Americans. But that pragmatism, which I know is in the philosophical tradition of America, very American, it is not American in the historical tradition of America. We were never pragmatic people. We were always faith-based people who went to the place that nobody else wanted to go to tame the thing that no one wanted to tame. And we did it. And we did it beautifully. And they're not
mutually exclusive either. There's prudence and wisdom, right? But imagine me trying to live a life of faith in the profession that is the antithesis of faith. Everything is evidence. Yeah. What can you prove?
Yes.
It's tough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you get into conversations about like the law was made for man not for the law. And I've heard Tucker Carlson talk about this, just that I think he said his dad used to say when a society is filled with lawfare and lawyers and legal stuff, is a bad society because everything's about it's tit for tat. Everything's about getting each other.
It's all negotiated.
It's all negotiating. It's all it's all power. It's Marxism. It's like, how can I manipulate this word? Or it's postmodernism. How can I change the definitions? And there's no good faith effort towards anything. And that, I think, like we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, that gets to the core of what the 2026 election is going to be about and what the 2028 election is going to be about. It's like, what is this country basically just people suing each other? Is that what America is? Or is it anything else? Are we going to do anything else?
Is it consumption or is it multiplication and growth?
Right.
That's the question in front of us.
Yeah.
And I want to demonstrate a vision of what I call kingdom economics, which is multiplication. It's not even addition, it's multiplication. You put two humans together and they create societies. That's multiplication. You sow a seed and the seed becomes a tree. The tree has multiple fruit. Each fruit has dozens, hundreds of seeds, and each year they grow. This is exponential multiplication, and this is the way we should think. Of course, Marxism and consumption always thinks of everything in a pie. I got to get my piece. I got to grab my man. I got to,
yes.
Instead of, there is plenty, there is abundance, that mindset. And I'm not saying that the natural world doesn't try to, spread us super thin like butter on a hot day on asphalt, but you've got to decide in your mind. That is why it's the substance. Faith is the substance of things not seen, the evidence.
Yeah, you
have to decide that is true, that multiplication is available, and then you have to live your life that way and have a vision of that for others. And I think you're right. That's very American. Yeah,
it's 100% American. And it's why we have all the great things that we have today that we've in a lot of ways ruined, but are not irredeemable.
But they can be, they can be redeemed.
And they're not irredeemable. I look at the Ivy Leagues. I look at Harvard and Yale and Princeton, and I'm like, these are terrible places, and I would never send my kids there in a billion years. But what they were the greatest beacons of intellectual rigor that society had ever. Human history.
I don't know about that, Andy, because I went to Wheaton, and you know what they say. People who couldn't get into Wheaton go to Harvard. So
Is that what they say? Here's the cool thing about Wheaton, because that's like right down in Chicago. Right. They have this thing. I don't know if you knew it. I don't know if it was there when you were there, but the Wade Center. Had you ever heard of that?
When did they build that? You might want to look that up. I think this is showing how old I am. I was class in 99. So
I was born in 99. So we're on the opposite. Wade Center. Let me look and see, because it's
after.
It probably was. Their about page doesn't say when it was built, but everyone should go there because it's basically. So all of Lewis, Tolkien, Chesterton.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Dorothy Sayers. Oh. They have the wardrobe there that Lewis's grandfather made for him.
You know what? Yes. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I think portions. This is what's confusing me now, because portions of those collections were there when I was there.
But
then more was donated after. And what I can't remember is what's when. But this is really sad. Even Wheaton.
Oh, it's don't even get me started on Wheaton and other schools that are supposed to be Christian.
But they are not irredeemable. There we go.
No, everything's redeemable, but you got to. The education system needs to be.
It requires to go into the redemption. It does require the repentance. There has to be a break point where we say, "This is not okay. It's dead."
Mm-hmm. And in the Bible, there were two options: you repent or you're destroyed. I mean, that's like it. And the destruction sometimes just comes from externally, but a lot of times it's a result of the chaos that erupts within when you don't repent of your sin. I mean, it just happens. But the interesting thing about the Wade Center was they've got all these guys who I think are the quintessential conservatives: Chesterton, Lewis, Tolkien, and the people that I think we should create the blueprint for America moving forward off of, because I think that they understood what the West was, and they lived in the time of great turmoil and world wars and things like that. They knew what it was at a deeper level and a more spiritual level, and they accepted the strange paradoxes of life, and that one of them being just the paradox of redemption, one of them being the biblical paradoxes of incarnation and what these principles of Christianity, what those principles do in the real world and how they can influence our decisions today. And I think that just as we've been talking, a lot of what Americans are focused on, sadly, is safety and protection. And, and I'm not saying sadly in like a derogatory way or anything like that, because some of these things are important. Safety and protection are important, but I think it breeds stagnation.
Well, if that's your end goal, you're never going to get it.
Right.
That's the problem. Right.
You're going to give all your rights up for it, and then you're going to get something
still not going to
worse.
have it.
Exactly. And so how do you, because this is a strange dynamic as a politician, somebody who's running to be the governor of a state, there is this strange relationship between the people of that state and the people running that state. One is you're serving them, they're the boss, and you work for them. A lot of politicians don't understand that, but that is how it's supposed to work.
That's how it is.
And yet you have a vision that not all of them share. And you have a belief system that not all of them share. You believe, like, on a very base level, I assume that a man is a man and a woman is a woman. Now, not everybody in Florida believes that. So what's that relationship for you as you think about, all right, you win the election, then you become the governor. Now you're setting forth a vision. You know, some people are going to hate it,
Sure.
and some people are going to be skeptical of you and your vision. Like, how do you implement this for the broadest amount of people?
Right.
Yeah, obviously knowing that you're not going to make everybody happy.
That's an excellent question. And I think,
Sure.
yeah, but the number one thing is, you know, we do have a guiding construct in the Constitution for what law should be.
Yeah.
And so this comes up, for example, in the context of, you know, Sharia law making an entrance. I will be the servant of the people who you know, adhere to the Islamic faith.
Mm-hmm.
But Sharia law is incompatible with our Constitution.
100%.
It will not enter. So, so in many ways, it's I don't want to make it too trite, but you know, the whole thing: good fences make good or what is it? Strong fences make good neighbors. Whatever it is. The idea is the boundary lines to say this is how our society operates. These are the baseline structures, and this is how we're going to understand one another. And that's in the Constitution, and then of course the Florida Constitution.
Yeah.
So I think being very clear about those things, and then also as a governor being very clear about what my jurisdiction is and what it is not.
Right.
And again, trying to stay out, trying to demonstrate government being less micromanaging instead of more, and demonstrating to people also by way of how I interact with those who already hate me vocally, or, you know, come out later and say so. You know, how I interact is demonstrating a vision for how we can all work together, and also being somebody who can demonstrate unifying principles instead of trying to gain votes or popularity or whatever on the things that divide us. There's tons of tribalism already, but I think the human experience is a universal. It's a unifying thing.
Right.
The human experience. I always joke that, you know, especially when you look at jokes online of parenting, it's like that is clearly the universal language around the world is parenting, right?
Right.
And I think it may not be as sexy as some of the other things in the 21st century, but I do think that in terms of leadership, that's what people are in fact looking for. I don't think they want another mommy or a nanny. I don't think they want a micromanager. They don't want somebody who's forcing them to comply to everything. They might want somebody who will make other people comply, but I have to demonstrate justice is for all, you know? So I think just being clear about those guidelines, and again, you know, showing by example what I think leadership should look like, I believe will win over many, many people. You're never going to please everyone. And you just have to accept that. You know, and not let that be the swaying factor either. Yeah.
Clarity is the most important thing, in my opinion, in politics. Like, just being clear about where you're coming from, because it seems like we're in the age of lying about everything, even when you don't need to lie. It's like people just like having fun lying or whatever. Like, let's just lie and see what happens.
It's so weird.
It's just horrible. I mean, it's indicative of other sin and darkness and things like that. But that is the clarity and being able to articulate a position. I mean, I mean, in and of itself is way better than most politicians, because
and listening too. I left that point out, but listening to people.
Yeah.
You know, even if they're very against me or against what my policies are, saying you're valued. I hear you. Now, here's what we're doing. You know what I mean? I think there's respect in that.
Yeah. Also, you're allowed to have your own opinion. That's not
right.
You can't shut down people for disagreeing with you, which seems to be both strategies for both sides right now. Is anyone who disagrees with me, we're just going to pretend like they don't exist, or we're going to shout them down. And
I think it's because they don't have an answer and they're embarrassed by that. I actually think that's largely why people do that, is they get afraid because they're like, I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
Be calm. It's okay if you don't have an answer. Like, it's fine, whatever.
Well, our media doesn't really incentivize that. Though.
No, it doesn't.
Like, really, a couple of people just do their podcast and they incentivize honest conversation. But like, if somebody says, yeah, I don't know, which I haven't heard this in a long time, but if a politician was like, yeah, I actually don't know, I'm going to have to look into that. I don't know what would happen. If it happened on like Fox News or CNN, I'm sure that they would just get slammed for that. But if it happened on Rogan or something, I think that there would be more conversation around it. I do think that a lot matters. Like the medium matters.
Well, the context and what it is. If it's in your jurisdiction to know, you better know it.
Yeah, that's true.
But I do think there's, and that may have been the wrong example, but there's space for, there's a time for everything, right? Mm-hmm. There's a time to debate. And then there's a time to be silent. There's a time to listen, and there's a time to speak. And I think, rightly dividing what the times are is an important point in a leader. And I frankly don't see it very often. No.
So my last question, and I think we talked a little bit about it, and we talked about it more conceptually than we did in a more forward way, is just because I think that this is really important, and to me it matters, and I think that it does matter to young people. Like, if you became the governor, and I've worked with people who have compromised on the route to becoming the governor, on the route to trying to become the governor. You get to the end and things get crazy and everybody's like throwing insults, and then they're like, okay, abortion's not that bad anymore. And then they lose. Like, are you willing to die for the truth? And are you how bought into this race are you? Like, are you going all the way, basically, is the question.
Absolutely. Going to go all the way to the point that the Lord leads. I do want to put that caveat in.
Yeah.
Because again, this is not about a personal career change. It's about trying to serve. And if my utility in serving in this capacity ends at some point shy of the election, I think that'll become clear and I'll have good explanation for it.
Yeah.
But not just flitting about from here to there, because that's also not service.
Right.
But to the other question, to live is Christ and to die is gain.
Right.
And, I want to make sure that if I'm going to die for something, though, that it was worth dying for. That would be a clear point.
Yeah.
But I don't think that someone who serves God and has yielded their life for whatever his purpose is can say that their life isn't their price. I think it has to be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're reserving something. I don't know. I mean, I haven't been asked to give my life yet, thankfully.
No. But you never know. I mean, Charlie Kirk, like, this is also an age of assassination. I mean, there are assassination attempts. And I mean, Trump, there's Kavanaugh. I mean, there's stuff happening all the time. And there's threats all the time. And I don't want to sound dramatic. I feel like I'm like dramatic. Are you willing to die?
I don't think it's dramatic. You have to think about it.
Yeah.
You have to think about it. Look, we talked about it being a spiritual war. So anything that is pushing against death and destruction and consumption, the enemy is going to come after it. So I do want to live my life. And what I'm saying to you now, I don't want it to just be words I'm saying.
Yeah.
God forbid I have to test it at any point. I hope I'm found worthy that what I said was really what I meant. But that's what I'm going into it in. Yes.
Good. Well, Rachel, thanks for doing this podcast. This is a great conversation. I think people should follow you and follow the campaign and see where this thing ends up. You mentioned your website.
Yes.
What is that again?
It's www.rachel, RACHEL, forgov.com. Super easy. And actually, that's the same as all of my social media handles for the campaign on all the platforms. Great. And we would love shares and likes and follows because, again, it's a platform that's newly developing. And so, to the extent we're going to be having these kinds of conversations there so that people can see them, we would love for people to support us there. And also we're grassroots. So go to the website, support. Yay.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's all very important for the campaign. Well, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy. It's really a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much.